Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her quarters on Axiom Prime, watching ships from 100 different species drift past the massive space station. She had served humanity for 30 years, first as a diplomat on Earth, then among the stars. The Interstellar Council had accepted humanity 2 centuries ago, and Elena had spent her entire career trying to prove that her species belonged among the elder races of the galaxy. Today felt different. Something was wrong. The council had called an emergency session, but when Elena arrived at the great chamber, the doors would not open for her. Her access codes, which had worked for 15 years, suddenly showed red. A Cathari guard, tall and covered in blue scales, blocked her path with 4 arms crossed over his chest. "The session is closed to human representatives," the guard said. His translator made his voice flat and emotionless. Elena felt her heart go cold. "On whose authority?" "The council speaks with one voice today, Ambassador. You will return to your quarters and wait." She wanted to argue. She wanted to demand answers. But she had learned long ago that fighting the Cathari directly never worked. So she nodded, turned, and walked away. But she did not return to her quarters. Instead, she found a service corridor that maintenance workers used, and she made her way to an observation deck above the council chamber. What she heard through the ventilation system changed everything. High Chancellor Vormesh of the Cathari Dominion stood at the center of the great chamber. Around him sat representatives from all 12 member species. Their holographic forms flickered in seats designed for bodies of every shape and size. Vormesh's voice boomed through the hall. "The genetic analysis is complete," he said. "The humans carry the architect's sequences in their very blood. Every single one of them. It is not a mutation. It is not an accident. They were designed." A murmur ran through the chamber. Elena pressed her hand against the cold metal of the ventilation grate, trying to understand what she was hearing. "The architects vanished 3 million years ago," said Representative Telm of the Vel Collective, her crystalline body pulsing with anxious light. "They seeded life across the galaxy and then disappeared. Why would they create the humans? Does it matter why?" Vormesh replied. "What matters is what the humans could become. Our scientists have studied the dormant sequences. If activated, these genes would give humans power over the fundamental forces of reality itself. They could reshape matter with thought. They could fold space. They could become what the architects once were. Then we must help them," said another voice. Elena recognized it as belonging to the Mulladay ambassador, whose species was known for kindness and art. "If they carry such potential, help them?" Vormesh laughed, a harsh sound. "Help them become gods while we remain insects? The architects abandoned us. They left us to struggle in the dark while they transcended to something beyond our understanding. And now their final creation walks among us, a time bomb waiting to explode. How long before humanity looks at our civilizations and sees nothing but ants to be stepped on?" Elena's hands were shaking now. She had always known some species feared humanity's rapid growth. In just 2 centuries, humans had spread across dozens of star systems. They bred quickly, adapted quickly, and learned quickly. But she had never imagined fear like this. "What do you propose?" asked Representative Telm. Vormesh straightened his massive body. "The cleansing protocol. We eliminate the threat before it can emerge. Every human world. Every human colony. Every human ship. We end them while we still can." "Genocide," the Mulladay ambassador whispered. "You are proposing genocide." "I am proposing survival," Vormesh replied. "Our survival. The survival of every species in this galaxy. The humans have existed for only a few 100,000 years. We have history stretching back millions. Are we to throw all of that away because we were too afraid to act?" The chamber fell silent. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to burst through the grate and tell them they were wrong, that humanity would never harm them, that her people only wanted to explore and learn and grow alongside their galactic neighbors. But she stayed silent because she knew it would not matter. She could see it in the body language of every representative. The fear had already taken hold. The vote took only minutes. One by one, the representatives gave their consent. Even the Melody, with tears streaming down her face, pressed the button for yes. When it was done, Vormesh nodded with satisfaction. The combined fleet will depart within the hour. 40,000 ships from every member species. We will arrive at Sol in 17 hours. By this time tomorrow, the human threat will be erased from history. Elena ran. She ran through service corridors and maintenance tunnels, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She reached a communications room used by cleaning staff and locked the door behind her. Her hands flew across the console, bypassing security protocols she had learned years ago, when she was young and foolish and thought such knowledge might never be needed. The message was simple. It contained everything she had heard and a single plea. Run if you can. Fight if you must. I am sorry I could not do more. She transmitted it to Earth, using every emergency channel she knew. Then she wiped the console and sat back in her chair, breathing hard. The door exploded inward. Cathari security forces poured into the room, their weapons raised. Vormesh himself stood behind them, his face twisted with cold anger. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, "you were told to remain in your quarters." Elena stood slowly. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. "I heard everything, and I sent a warning. Whatever happens next, my people will not go quietly into the dark." Vormesh studied her for a long moment. "Your people will go into the dark regardless. But I admit, you have more courage than I expected from your species. It is almost a shame." He nodded to his guards. Elena closed her eyes as they raised their weapons. 17 hours away, the combined fleet assembled. 40,000 warships from 12 species, carrying enough firepower to crack planets open like eggs. They entered hyperspace as one, a wall of death moving toward an unsuspecting world. And on Earth, in a military bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a communication officer stared at his screen in horror. He read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it. Then he picked up a phone that connected to exactly one person on the planet. "General Chun," he said, his voice shaking. "We have a problem." The clock had started. Humanity had 17 hours to prepare for its own extinction. And somewhere in the void between stars, 40,000 ships carried the Council's judgment toward Sol, certain that they would find nothing but easy prey waiting for them. They were wrong. General Marcus Chen had not slept in 30 hours. He stood in the command center beneath Luna's surface, surrounded by screens showing the approaching fleet. 40,000 ships. The number seemed unreal. Earth's entire defense force was less than 2,000 vessels, most of them old and poorly armed. 15 hours until they arrive," said his aide. A young woman named Lieutenant Park. "Sir, we have to start evacuations. We could save some people if we save them. Where?" Chun asked quietly. "They are coming for all of us. Every colony, every station, every ship. There is nowhere to run." The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. The alien fleet would not stop until every human being was dead. That was what the message had said. Total extinction. Chun closed his eyes and made a decision he had hoped he would never have to make. "Get me Dr. Tanaka on Mars. Priority 1. 10 minutes later, a tired face appeared on his private screen. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was 80 years old, but her eyes were still sharp. She had spent 50 years running Project Prometheus, humanity's most secret research program. I assume you have heard, Chun said. I have heard. Tanaka's voice was calm. I have also run the calculations. Conventional defense is impossible. We would need 10 times our current fleet strength just to slow them down. Then we need something unconventional. Tanaka was quiet for a moment. You were talking about the cascade signal. Yes, General, we have tested it on only 300 subjects. The results were promising, but we do not know what will happen if we broadcast it to the entire species. The activation of dormant genetic material on that scale could kill billions. And if we do nothing, the aliens will kill all of us anyway. Chun leaned forward. Tell me the truth, Doctor. Do you believe it will work? Tanaka removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. For the first time, she looked her age. I believe that human beings carry something incredible inside them. I have seen things in my lab that should be impossible. A woman who moved objects with her mind. A child who predicted events before they happened. A man who changed lead into gold by touching it. These abilities are real, General. They are locked inside our DNA, waiting to be released. Then we release them. All at once. For everyone? And if it kills us? Chun smiled grimly. Then we die a few hours earlier than planned. But at least we die trying. Tanaka nodded slowly. I will need authorization from every government on Earth. The signal must be broadcast through the neural network simultaneously. Every human being must receive it at the same moment, or the cascade will fail. What followed was the fastest political decision in human history. Within 2 hours, every nation on Earth had agreed. Within 4 hours, the broadcast arrays were ready. Within 6 hours, every human being alive received a message on their personal devices. In 1 hour, a signal will be transmitted to all humans. It may unlock abilities you did not know you had. It may do nothing. It may kill you. But our species faces extinction, and this is our only chance. Stay where you are. Keep your eyes closed. And hope. In cities across Earth, people gathered with their families. On colony ships traveling between worlds, crews held hands and waited. On Mars and Luna and the stations orbiting Jupiter, humanity prepared for either death or transformation. In the command center, Chun watched the countdown reach 0. The signal was invisible. It moved through communication networks, through neural implants, through the air itself. It touched every human mind at exactly the same moment, carrying a pattern that Dr. Tanaka had spent 50 years perfecting, and humanity fell. On the screens, Chun watched biosign readings from across human space. Heart rates dropped to 0. Brain activity flatlined. Billions of people collapsed where they stood, their bodies suddenly empty of life. No, whispered Lieutenant Park. We killed them. We killed everyone. Chun felt his own heart pounding, which meant the signal had somehow missed him. Perhaps the bunker's shielding had blocked it. He was alive, but he might be one of the last humans left in the universe. Then the readings changed. One by one, the biosigns returned. But they were different now. The energy signatures were stronger, brighter than anything human sensors had ever recorded. The numbers kept climbing, going past every maximum the equipment could measure. What is happening? Park asked, her voice shaking. Chun shook his head. He had no answer, but he felt something strange in the air around him, a vibration he could sense in his bones. The shielding had blocked the initial signal, but whatever was happening now was passing through solid rock like it was not even there. He felt it touch his mind. It was warm and familiar, like remembering a dream he had forgotten long ago. Suddenly he understood mathematics he had never studied. He could feel the rotation of the earth beneath his feet. He could sense the gravity of Luna pulling at his blood. Across human space, 8 billion people opened their eyes. And the universe looked different. On Earth, a factory worker named James looked at his hands and watched blue light dance between his fingers. In Tokyo, a grandmother lifted her wheelchair-bound husband with her mind and wept with joy. On a colony ship near Neptune, the captain watched as a crack in the hull sealed itself shut, the metal flowing like water at the touch of a young engineer's hand. Dr. Tanaka stood in her lab on Mars, tears streaming down her face. She could see the connections now, the threads of quantum probability that linked everything in the universe. It was beautiful beyond words, but not everyone survived. Some minds could not handle the change. Across human space, about 300 million people never woke up. And some who did wake up were no longer truly human. They looked at the physical world like it was a prison too small for them, and within hours, they simply faded away, moving to some level of existence that flesh and blood could not follow. Still, 8 billion remained. 8 billion humans who had been remade into something new. And the alien fleet was only 10 hours away. Chun opened the channel. To every human ship and station, "This is General Chun. I know you are confused. I know you are scared. But look inside yourselves. Feel what you have become. The Council sent a fleet to destroy us because they were afraid of what we might be. Now we are going to show them that their fear was justified." He paused, feeling the power humming in his blood. Humanity does not die today. Today, we wake up. In the darkness between stars, the combined fleet continued its approach. Their sensors detected the strange energy readings from human space, but they did not understand what they meant. Admiral Verkith of the Kefari flagship dismissed the readings as equipment errors. In a few hours, he would learn how wrong he was. The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Verkith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and looked at the blue dot in the distance that was Earth. His forearms rested behind his back as he gave the order. "Begin the approach. Launch the first missile wave at maximum range. I want their orbital stations destroyed before we even reach firing distance." 10,000 missiles streaked toward Earth. Each one carried enough explosive power to destroy a city. Behind them, 40,000 warships moved forward in perfect formation, their weapons charging for the main bombardment. Verkith allowed himself a small smile. This would be easy. The humans had no fleet strong enough to stop them, no weapons powerful enough to scratch their shields. In a few hours, he would watch their planet burn. Then the missiles stopped, not exploded, not destroyed. Simply stopped, hanging motionless in space, like someone had pressed a pause button on reality. What is happening? Verkith demanded that his sensor officer's scales had turned pale with fear. "Admiral, I am detecting massive energy readings from Earth. The scale is... This cannot be correct. These readings are larger than our entire fleet combined." Verkith opened his mouth to respond, but the words never came. Because standing on his bridge, in the exact center of the command deck, was a human woman who had not been there a moment before. She was young, perhaps 30 years old, with dark skin and black hair tied back in a practical braid. She wore simple clothes that looked like farm work clothing, but her eyes glowed with soft golden light, and the air around her seemed to bend and shimmer like heat rising from hot metal. "Admiral Verkith," she said. Her voice was calm and quiet, but somehow it filled every corner of the bridge. "My name is Priya Sharma. Until yesterday, I was an agricultural engineer on a colony world you have never heard of. Today, I am something else." Guards rushed toward her with weapons raised. Priya did not move. She did not even look at them. But the guards stopped mid-step, frozen in place like statues. "I have not harmed them," Priya said. "I have simply asked their muscles to wait. They will be fine when I release them." She turned her glowing eyes back to Verkith. "I came to deliver a message. I would appreciate if you would listen. Verkith's hand moved toward the emergency alarm. It stopped halfway, held by an invisible force. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am what your council feared we would become. What your scientists detected in our DNA. The architects made us admiral, just as they made your species and all the others. But they made us to be their successors, their children, their heirs." Priya walked slowly toward the main viewport, looking out at the stars. For 300,000 years, we slept. We lived short lives, built small civilizations, and never knew what we truly were. Your betrayal woke us up. Outside the viewport, Verkith could see impossible things happening. Human figures floated in the vacuum without suits, their bodies protected by nothing but their own will. Ships throughout his fleet were going dark, their power systems shutting down one by one. He watched in horror as a Velm battlecruiser's weapons simply fell off, the metal bolts that held them in place dissolving into dust. "My fleet," he said. "Your fleet is disabled, not destroyed. None of your crew have been harmed." Priya turned to face him. "Do you understand what that means, Admiral? We could destroy you. Every ship, every soldier, every trace that you ever existed. The power we now hold is beyond anything you can imagine. I could turn this ship into light. I could fold space and send your fleet to another galaxy. I could reach into your mind and rewrite your thoughts until you believed you had always been our friend." She stepped closer, and Verkith felt true fear for the first time in his long military career. "But we choose not to do any of those things, because we are still human. We still remember what it felt like to be small and afraid and mortal. We remember kindness and mercy and hope. The architects did not just give us power, Admiral. They gave us something much more important. They gave us the wisdom to use it correctly." Priya raised one hand, and Verkith found that he could move again. He gasped, stumbling backward against his command chair. "Go home," Priya said. "Take your fleet and return to Council space. Tell them what you have seen here today. Tell them that humanity is awake now, and we are very, very disappointed in what our children have become. But also tell them this: we do not seek revenge. We do not want war. We want to teach. We want to guide. We want to help you become what you were always meant to be." "And if we refuse?" Verkith asked, finding his voice. "If we return with stronger weapons, greater numbers?" Priya smiled sadly. "Then we will stop you again, as many times as necessary. We have learned patience along with power, Admiral. We will wait for you to understand. We will wait for 1,000 years if we must, because that is what parents do for their children, even when those children disappoint them." She began to fade, her body becoming transparent. "One more thing," she said, her voice now seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She was executed for warning us. She died believing she had failed her species. I want you to know that her message saved us. Her courage gave us the time we needed. When you return to Council space, I want you to tell them that humans remember their heroes, and we remember those who killed them." Then she was gone. Verkith stood alone on his silent bridge, surrounded by frozen guards who were just now beginning to move again. Outside his viewport, his once mighty fleet drifted helplessly in the void. Every ship powerless, every weapon useless. For the first time in the history of the Kethari Dominion, a fleet returned home without completing its mission. They carried with them recordings of everything that had happened, the impossible figures floating in space, the weapons dissolving into nothing, and a young human woman who had walked through their defenses like they did not exist. The galaxy would never be the same dot and on Earth. Priya Sharma returned to her body and opened her eyes. She was sitting in a field of wheat under a clear blue sky. Around her, Other awakened humans were gathering, drawn together by bonds they could all feel now. What happens next? Asked a young boy who had discovered he could hear the thoughts of birds. Priya looked up at the stars. She could now see even in daylight, her new senses showing her the vast web of life that filled the galaxy. Now, she said, we decide what kind of gods we want to be. 6 months had passed since the awakening, and the galaxy was falling apart. The Interstellar Council met an emergency session almost every day now, but nothing they decided seemed to matter. The Cathari Dominion was building new weapons in secret, massive devices based on ancient technology they had hidden for millions of years. The Velen Collective had withdrawn from Council space entirely, their crystalline ships fleeing toward the galactic rim where they hoped humanity could not follow. The Melody had done something nobody expected. They had sent ambassadors to Earth, asking for forgiveness. And everywhere, fear spread like a disease. On Earth, humanity struggled with its transformation. Most people had gained small gifts, better memory, faster healing, and an understanding of complex ideas that would have taken years to learn before. These people went back to their normal lives, working and loving and raising families, just with a few extra abilities they were still learning to use. But some had become something more. In a small town in Argentina, a man named Carlos discovered he could hear the pain of the planet itself. He felt every polluted river, every dying forest, every species pushed toward extinction. The weight of it drove him mad. He tried to heal everything at once, pouring his power into the earth without limit. When they found him 3 days later, he had turned himself into a tree, his body merged with the ground, still trying to fix wounds that were too large for any single person to repair. In soul, a teenage girl realized she could see all possible futures at the same time. Every choice anyone made created new branches, new possibilities, new worlds. She saw millions of versions of reality layered on top of each other, and she could not make them stop. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped speaking to anyone. Her parents found her sitting in her room staring at nothing, lost in infinity. It took a team of awakened healers 2 weeks to bring her back, and even then, she was never quite the same. These were the hard cases, the people whose gifts were too large for human minds to hold. Some recovered with help. Some faded away into other dimensions, becoming something that no longer fit in physical reality. And a few, a very dangerous few, decided that their power meant they no longer had to follow any rules. In Nigeria, a warlord who had gained the ability to control fire burned 3 villages before other awakened humans stopped him. In Russia, a bitter old man tried to collapse the entire Moscow subway system because he felt the government had wronged him decades ago. Each time, humanity had to police its own, using gifts to stop gifts. Power to contain power. It was messy and painful, and sometimes people died. But slowly, a new order began to form. The Shepherd Council was created 3 months after the awakening. It was not a government. It had no laws and no armies. It was simply a gathering of awakened humans who agreed on one simple principle: power must be used to protect, not to control. Anyone who used their gifts to harm innocents would be stopped. Anyone who needed help learning to control their abilities would receive it. And no one would be forced to use their gifts if they did not want to. Priya Sharma became the voice of the Shepherd Council. She had not asked for the role. She had not wanted it. But her actions on the Cathari flagship had made her famous, and her calm wisdom made people trust her. So she accepted the burden and did her best to carry it. She was meeting with representatives from the Melody when the alarm came. We have detected a massive energy signature at the edge of the system, reported a young man whose gift let him sense disturbances in space itself. It is old, very old, and it is heading toward Earth. Priya reached out with her mind and felt it too. something ancient and powerful, moving through the darkness between stars. She recognized the energy pattern from her new memories, the knowledge that had flooded into her during the awakening. The God Killer, she whispered. The Melody Ambassador, a beautiful being made of living sound, trembled with fear. That is impossible. That weapon was supposed to be lost. The Council has searched for it for millions of years. The Cathari found it, Priya said. Her voice was flat and calm, but inside she felt cold. They must have been hiding it all along, waiting for a threat large enough to justify using it. The God Killer was an architect weapon, built in the early days of the galaxy, when the architects still feared that something might threaten their existence. It was designed to destroy anything that carried their genetic signature. If the Cathari activated it near Earth, it would kill every awakened human in an instant. Priya stood and walked to the window. In the distance, she could see the weapon now, a massive structure of crystal and metal that seemed to bend light around it. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like a tornado or a nuclear explosion. Can we stop it? The Melody Ambassador asked. I do not know, Priya admitted. It was built to kill beings like us. Our powers might mean nothing against it. She closed her eyes and reached out to every awakened human on Earth. In an instant, they all knew what was coming. She felt their fear, their anger, their determination. She felt parents holding their children close. She felt soldiers preparing to fight. She felt old people who had lived full lives making peace with death. And she felt something else too. A calm certainty that spread through the collective human consciousness, like sunrise spreading across a landscape. They had faced extinction before and survived. They would face it again. Whatever happens, Priya said softly, we will not run. We will not hide. We will stand together and face our fate. The God Killer reached optimal range and began to activate. Energy built in its crystalline core, preparing to unleash devastation on a scale that had not been seen in 3 million years. Then it stopped. A new light appeared, golden and warm, flowing from the weapon's core. A voice filled every mind in the solar system, human and alien alike. It was not a voice of words, but of pure meaning. Ancient and kind and impossibly vast. Genetic signature confirmed. Successor species identified. Inheritance protocols activated. Welcome home. Children, we have been waiting for you. The God Killer did not fire. Instead, it transformed. The weapon designed to destroy became something else entirely. A key. And all across the galaxy, ancient architect installations that had sat silent for 3 million years began to wake up, on a dead moon orbiting a star in the Cathari Dominion. A massive door opened for the first time since the universe was young. Inside was knowledge, the complete history of the architects, their science, their philosophy, their hopes for the children they had created. In the Veln Collective's abandoned territory, a structure unfolded from what had appeared to be a small asteroid. It was a hospital of sorts, designed to heal any wound, cure any disease, repair any damage to any form of life. And at the center of the galaxy, something even larger stirred. A construct the size of a small planet opened its eyes for the first time in eons, looked at the young species that had finally passed its final test, and began to prepare its welcome. Priya fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Through the network that connected all awakened humans, she heard billions of people laughing and crying at the same time. They had been tested. They had been threatened with extinction. And when given ultimate power, they had chosen mercy over revenge, protection over destruction. That choice had been the final exam, and humanity had passed. Now the real work could begin. 1 year after the awakening, Sofia Vasquez stood in the great chamber of Axiom Prime. She was 30 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and her mother's courage. When Elena Vasquez had been executed for warning humanity, Sophia had been a university student on Earth, studying to become a teacher. Now she was something more, the voice of humanity to the galaxy. The chamber was full. Representatives from all 12 council species sat in their designated places, but they no longer looked proud and powerful. They looked afraid. They looked like children waiting to be punished. Sophia understood their fear. In the past year, humanity had accessed the architect installations scattered across the galaxy. They had learned things that changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. And now they had to decide what to do with that knowledge. She stepped forward and began to speak. 3 million years ago, the architects faced a choice. They had evolved beyond physical form. They had become beings of pure thought and energy, capable of living forever, capable of reshaping reality itself. They could have ruled the galaxy. They could have made themselves gods over every species that would ever exist. The chamber was silent. Every eye watched her. Instead, they chose to leave. They seeded the galaxy with life, created thousands of species, and then departed for a level of existence we cannot yet understand. But before they left, they created us, humanity, their final experiment, their last hope. Sophia walked to the center of the chamber, to the exact spot where High Chancellor Vormesh had once stood when he ordered humanity's extinction. Vormesh was dead now, killed by his own people when they learned the truth about what he had done. But his successor sat in the Kethari seat, a younger female named Kethala, who had spent the last year trying to repair the damage. The architects watched your species for millions of years, Sophia continued. They watched the Kethari, who had promise once, before you chose conquest over cooperation. They watched the Velm, who had wisdom once, before you chose isolation over growth. They watched 100 species rise and fall, each one failing the test in its own way. She paused, letting her words sink in. The test was simple. What would you do with power? Would you use it to help others, or would you use it to help only yourselves? Would you reach out to other species with open hands or with closed fists? Would you remember that every living being deserves kindness, or would you forget? We failed, said Kethala quietly. Her voice was rough with shame. We failed completely. When we learned what humanity could become, we tried to destroy you. Yes, Sophia agreed. You failed. But so did we, many times. We failed when we destroyed our own environment. We failed when we made war against each other. We failed every time we chose fear over hope, hatred over love, destruction over creation. The difference is that when we were given our final test, we made the right choice. You did not kill us, the Melody ambassador said. You had the power to destroy our entire fleet, and you let them go home. We did more than that, Sophia said. When the God Killer activated, it was designed to read our intentions. If we had wanted revenge, if we had been planning to use our power to dominate the galaxy, the weapon would have destroyed us. That was its true purpose, not to kill, but to judge. The architects wanted to make sure that whoever inherited their power would use it wisely. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every representative in the chamber. We passed the test, and now we have inherited everything the architects left behind. Knowledge that could transform your civilizations. Technology that could end disease, aging, even death. The ability to travel between stars in an instant. Power beyond anything you have ever imagined. The chamber held its breath. We could keep it all for ourselves. We could become rulers. We could make you serve us, bow to us, worship us. With what we now possess, no one could stop us. Fear flickered across alien faces. They had thought about this possibility. They had nightmares about it, thought Sophia smiled gently. But that is not what humans do. That is not who we are. The architects chose us because we combined strength with compassion. We fight and we create. We compete and we cooperate. We dream of power and we dream of peace. We are contradictions walking, impossibilities made flesh. And in that contradiction lives our greatest gift, the ability to choose kindness even when cruelty would be easier. She opened her hands, palms up, in a gesture of giving. We are not your rulers. We are your shepherds. We are here to guide you, not to command you. To teach you, not to control you. To help you become what you were always meant to be. What do you want from us? Asked Representative Teln of the Velm Collective, her crystalline body pulsing with cautious hope. We want you to learn, Sophia said. We want you to grow. We want you to stop fearing each other and start helping each other. The galaxy is vast and beautiful and full of wonders you have never imagined. There is room for everyone. There is enough for everyone. But you have to be willing to share. She walked to the Keth-Ari delegation and stopped in front of Kethala. Your species tried to murder mine. You killed my mother. She died alone and afraid, executed for the crime of trying to save her people. Sophia's voice was steady, but there was deep pain beneath the words. I could hate you for that. I could use my power to make your entire species suffer for what you did. Keth-Ale lowered her head. We would deserve it. Perhaps. But I choose something different. I choose to forgive you. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because carrying hatred would poison my own soul. And because the architects taught us that every species, no matter how lost, can find its way back to the light. She reached out and lifted Kethala's hand gently. Class is in session, Sophia said. We have so much to teach you. And unlike you, we are willing to wait until you are ready to learn. In the year that followed, humanity began its work. They built shepherd stations throughout the galaxy, massive structures where any species could come to learn, to heal, to grow. They shared architect technology freely, helping civilizations solve problems they had struggled with for millennia. They mediated conflicts, healed old wounds, and slowly taught the galaxy how to be a family instead of a collection of rivals. It was not easy. Some species resisted. Some could not let go of their old hatreds. Some tried to steal human power for themselves, not understanding that power was not something that could be stolen, only earned. But humanity was patient. They had learned patience along with everything else. They would wait 1,000 years if necessary. They would wait 10,000, because that was what shepherds did, and in the spaces between stars, in dimensions that flesh and blood could not reach. The architects who had transcended long ago watched their children take their first steps. They saw Sofia Vasquez offering forgiveness to those who had killed her mother. They saw Priya Sharma teaching a young Keth-Ari how to use its own hidden potential. They saw humans throughout the galaxy choosing kindness over cruelty, hope over despair, love over fear. They saw their dream finally coming true, and for the first time in 3 million years, the architects allowed themselves to rest. Their work was done. Their children had grown up. The universe was in good hands. The story of humanity had been one of struggle and pain and loss. But it was also a story of hope and courage and endless possibility. They had been betrayed and almost destroyed. They had been given power beyond comprehension. And in the end, they had chosen to use that power not for revenge, but for redemption, not for themselves, but for everyone. That was the human way. And it always would be.